Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, it is a Twitter Tuesday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. On today's show, opening up the mailbag and answering your questions like if the Tennessee Titans had the first overall pick in this year's draft, who would they select? Who is my favorite second tier wide receiver in this year's draft? And if you could add any past Tennessee Titan to this year's team, who would it be? I'll be answering all of that and more on a Twitter Tuesday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Titans fans, it is a Twitter Tuesday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, and today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all of the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. Visit today and tell them that Locked On sent you. But it is a Twitter Tuesday. We are opening up the mailbag. You guys always send in some heaters, so I'm excited to get back into them. Before we do, yes, today is a mailbag, but during this week coming up, we are going to begin the 2022 NFL Draft scouting process. Going to be going position by position through the offense and the defense, breaking down a ton of different prospects. We went over 186 prospects last year leading up to the NFL Draft. So make sure that you stay locked in to the Locked On Titans podcast. And thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. Make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you do stream, including on YouTube. Check out the Locked On Titans YouTube channel. Subscribe over there. Smash that notification bell so you know when all the content goes live. Hit that thumbs up button if you're watching on YouTube right now. Check me out on social media at Tic Tac Titans on Twitter. That's where you can send in your mailbag questions, and check out the show Facebook page at Locked On Titans Pod. But with that housekeeping out of the way, it's time to dive into your guys' questions. And like I said, as always, we have some fantastic ones. So gonna start off here with Aaron Wilson. And Aaron says, how would you rank the top tier receivers in the draft, and which is the most likely to be a Titan? Also, who is the best tier 2 receiver available? So for me, it's Garrett Wilson. It's Chris Olave. It's Jamison Williams. It's Treylon Burks. It's Drake London. That would be my top 5 of the top tier wide receivers. Who's most likely to be a Titan? I think it's Treylon Burks. I think he gets drafted 5th out of those 5 wide receivers. And I also think that he fits perfectly with the Titans schematically and what they want individually in a prospect. He gets some comparisons to a Dez Bryant, to an A.J. Brown, 6'2", big physical receiver with decent speed, a versatile guy. So I think he's a perfect fit. My favorite of the tier 2 wide receivers. Now, I'm in the middle of my scouting process, so don't hold me to this. But right now, I would say that my favorite is Christian Watson from North Dakota State. Tall, fast. He gives you the physical elements while also being that burner, under a 4.4 in the 40. So I would say that is my favorite tier 2 wide receiver right now, but leave me the right to reserve my decision and change my mind. Gail Green says, what are your thoughts on John Mechie from Alabama, the wide receiver? I feel like people just forgot about him, but I feel like he could be a great value pick. Well, I agree with you. He could be a great value pick, but the problem that I have is, coming off an injury, being a smaller guy, I'm not going to take Mechie in the first round. So if they could get him, for some reason, there's a trade up, late second round, early third round, something like that, I would feel okay with that, but I don't think he's going to be there at pick 90 either. But maybe if he was there at pick 90 and they took him, I would be perfectly fine with adding Mechie despite the injuries and size concerns. Dooney, Deputy, you guys with your Twitter names kill me all the time, but he says, are there any potential June 1st cuts that could possibly be great additions for potential Titans pickups in free agency part 2? And whose rogues gallery, the villains, would win in a fight, Batman or Spider-Man? Well, number one, we have to see the draft to know if there are any veterans who are going to be cut near free agency. There always is. I don't want to call it the second wave, but there always is a second part of free agency, like you mentioned, that are veterans who aren't as necessary for the money that they're making based on what happened in the draft. So after the draft happens, we'll have a better understanding of who makes sense to be cut. But as for your second question, I think Spider-Man's rogue gallery would beat Batman's, despite me being a big Bat stan. I love Batman. Love his rogues gallery. I think Spider-Man, because Spider-Man is a more powerful superhero, his villains have to be a little bit more powerful than Batman's to make the stories compelling. So think about like Rhino up against Bane. You would have Joker up against Green Goblin. Uh, you could think about like a Kingpin and a Hugo Strange would maybe make some sense as well. Man Bat and the Lizard, I think maybe make some sense. So there's a bunch of different options there. As for storytelling, I prefer Batman's because I like Batman better in general. But I think Spider-Man's Rogue Gallery is a little bit more powerful and would ultimately be able to win that fight. Look at Deathstroke versus Craven the Hunter. That would be a fun thought exercise. But moving forward, here, next question that we have comes from Rob Shee. Rob Sheboygan? Anyways, he says, you are in control of the Titans rebrand. You can make changes to the logo, uniform, colors. What would you change and why? So, Rob, for me, I like the Titans color scheme a ton. I like the uniforms a lot. The new uniforms, I like them a ton. The only thing that I would change, and it's a slight change, is I like the Titans secondary logo, just the T, more than I like the flaming T, like the sword T. That's the secondary logo. I like that one a little bit better than I like the flaming T-ball. So I would probably just flip those, and I would give the Titans an alternate red uniform. So I've been waiting for that my whole life. I would love to see that. So the last question that we're going to do here in our opening segment is from Alberto. He says, over under 5.5 wide receivers taken in the first round. I'm going to take the under on that. I think the top 5 wide receivers get taken. I don't think we see a sixth. I don't think we see Jahan Dotson, although he would be my selection. Not my selection, but I guess my opinion. If there was a sixth wide receiver taken, I think it'll be Jahan Dotson, but I don't think Pickens, I don't think Watson are options or should be taken in the first round. So I'll go under 5.5 wide receivers taken in the first round. But again, you guys have some amazing questions to get into, and we're going to continue breaking all of them down. Before we get into more of your guys' questions, though, do want to tell you about betonline.net. Betonline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championships odds, podcast, and reviews for all the different leagues this season. The Masters is here, folks, and I am so jazzed up. I'm a big golf fan. It's a great time to get in on some wagering, get some bets in at betonline.net, who is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. Head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn about all the trends and all the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Titans fans, let's continue this Twitter Tuesday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We're diving into your mailbag questions. Before we get back into those, do want to thank you guys again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. Also, check out the Locked On NFL podcast. It's the national show, the mothership of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm giving you all your Titans news in under 30 minutes Monday through Friday. We'll get all your NFL news in under 30 minutes Monday through Friday. It's free and available on all platforms. Check out the Locked On NFL podcast on whatever platform you do stream. But continuing to dive into your guys' questions here. Next, we have a question from Russell Zillman, and I think it's a very interesting one. So we think about getting extensions done for Jeffrey Simmons, A.J. Brown. Think about Amani Hooker, we've discussed recently. But what about Nate Davis? Nate Davis has been a solid guard. He had a better 2020 than he had a 2021, but he's still a solid starter in the NFL. And Russ says, your thoughts on the future Nate Davis currently has on this team and how a good 2022 season will impact that. If he has a really good 2022 season, he's a goner. And the way that I view it is, I don't think the Titans have the positional value on interior offensive line on guard specifically. I bet that if you ask them to rank the positions that are most important, center would be higher than guard. So I think that guard is probably the least important position to the Titans on the offensive line. They've talked about how they prioritize and have a premium on tackle. So for me, I think that if Nate Davis has a really, really good 2022, he's a goner and we can consider him a comp pick. But if he just has as good of a year as he had in 2021, solid level NFL starter, I think that Nate Davis will be brought back because, in my opinion, there's a good chance that Taylor Lewan is gone after 2022. And then you have a little bit more room on the offensive line. At that point, you wouldn't have Taylor Lewan's big contract. You'd have Ben Jones, which you can get out of that deal. And it may be his last year anyways, depending on how he feels. But you got rid of Roger Saffold. You're not going to have an expensive right tackle. So that leaves you room without Lewan, without an expensive right tackle, without Roger Saffold at guard, and just Ben Jones at center. That leaves you room to give out a pretty decent contract at guard to Nate Davis. So I think Nate Davis, if he has a solid season in 2022, will be on the Titans in 2023 on a new deal. If he doesn't and he has a great year in 2022, he's going to be gone, and you can look for the comp pick from that. Next, Varney Vale asks, well, I'll save your question for a little bit later, Varney. Benjamin says, if you could take one past Tennessee Titan and put him on this current team, who would it be? And I got to tell you, it's tough. It's a very tough call, in my opinion. I think it's tough. You could look at Steve McNair, maybe an improvement over Ryan Tannehill, but I know this is a hot take. I don't know how much of an improvement it would actually be. Steve McNair is great. We romanticize Steve McNair, but he wasn't like Peyton Manning level, despite winning that co-MVP. I know this is a little bit of a hot take, and it's not the point, but, moving past that. For me, I think right now I'd take Bruce Matthews. I'd go with Bruce Matthews, stick him in at left guard, and the Titans are a far better football team. I would also accept if you wanted to throw in Chris Johnson just to have the speed weapon on the Titans offense. I think that would be awesome as well. From there, uh, I'm kind of okay with what the Titans have. So that would be my picks right there. Chris Johnson, or I would go with Bruce Matthews. Maybe Michael Roos or David Stewart, I guess you could say, to play right tackle. But Michael Roos, slide him over to right tackle. If that would work out, maybe that would be an option for the Titans as well. Moving forward, though, from Benjamin's question, we are going to continue going. And Nate Asefa says, what is your favorite Titans current uni combo? Easy for me. It's the monochrome ones. It's either all white or all dark blue. Which of the two 90s Oilers throwbacks do you prefer, the baby blue or the white? For me, it's the baby blue. I think the baby blue just looks so good. I like the old school baby blue with more tinge of red to it. That tinge of red with the baby blue. Oh, I love it so much. So I'll go with the baby blue on that one. But my current favorites are the white, the all white, and the all dark blue. I think those are probably my current favorites by far, really. Cody Weath, this is just a great question. I'm excited to dive into this one. But he says, the Titans are on the clock with the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft. Who is your pick and why? For me, there's a lot of debate on this, but it's simple. Evan Neal, offensive tackle, Alabama. Start him at the right side, get rid of Taylor Lewan after this year, move him to the left side. You have your left tackle for the next 10 years. I think Evan Neal is as solid, as reliable, and as certain of a pick as you're going to find in this year's draft. I think he's more certain than Aiden Hutchinson. Now, I get the idea here. I'm a guy who says Bud Dupree's going to be gone after the year, and I still believe that. But I don't know if Hutchinson is special at edge rusher. And I think at edge rusher, you need special. At left tackle, you need consistency and reliability. So I'd pop Evan Neal in the number 1 pick. I'd throw him at right tackle. I'd move him to left tackle after they move on from Lewan, and I think I've solved the Titans' left tackle position for the next decade. I really like Evan Neal. I really feel comfortable with him, so that would be my answer to who the Titans would take with the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Cody followed that up with another question, and I want to point out that his Twitter name is Two Tone Turtle Man. Reppin' Turtles, bro. Reppin' Turtles. Feeling good. Looking good. Go Turtles. I like turtles. That's a little internet Easter egg for you guys if you're into memes. But moving forward, Cody says it is draft day. We are sitting there at the number 26 pick and on the clock. Not a single wide receiver has been taken. Who is your pick and why? And this just is basically like who's my top wide receiver? It's Garrett Wilson. And Garrett Wilson would just be absolutely perfect. But I'm starting to get the feeling that Garrett Wilson will go in the top 10 as high as number 8 to the Atlanta Falcons. So not expecting him to be there, but that would definitely be my answer. Kevin Davis said, what is your opinion of the Titans having a brand new stadium, hopefully by 2026? What are your wants and don't wants for the stadium? Well, this is pretty simple to me, Kevin. It's a really simple one. I want a retractable roof and I want natural grass, no turf. My don't wants is no turf. I do not want turf. It is a proven fact that injuries are more likely on turf. So I want turf, but I want the stadium open. So retractable roof. And right now they're figuring out the finances. Amy Adams Strunk is saying she's putting up 700 million. The city might put up 500. The state might put up 700. The NFL probably kick in there and they'll get it done. But the Titans are going to get a new stadium. I just hope it's a retractable roof because I don't want a dome. I want to be able to have the stadium open, and I don't want turf. I want natural grass. So good question there, Kevin. I like that one a lot. Dorian Clowers says, what if Olave is there as well? What would you assume they do? And the juxtaposition is with Trevor Penning, the offensive tackle from Northern Iowa. And I think if the Titans had the choice between Penning and Olave, they would take Trevor Penning. We know that they put a premium on offensive tackle. And if Olave drops that far, that means the wide receivers are falling down the board, which would mean that you have a better shot of getting a better wide receiver later in the draft. So I would take Trevor Penning and go with the offensive tackle right there. But we are going to cap off this Twitter Tuesday by going over the rest of your guys' mailbag questions. Again, just some absolutely fantastic mailbag questions from you guys. I'm always impressed by how awesome they are. But before we move on, do want to tell you a little more about today's sponsor of the show, rockauto.com. RockAuto.com is a family business that's been serving auto parts customers online for over 20 years. They literally have everything you need on their easy to navigate online catalog. They have brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even brand new carpet. And here's the thing, when you go to rockauto.com, you're never going to pay more than the guy next to you based on what your job is. One thing I didn't know is chain auto parts stores have different price tiers depending on whether you're a do-it-yourselfer or a professional mechanic. So there's a chance that you have to, 1, put on pants, 2, go into a store, 3, pay 30%, 50%, 100% more than the guy next to you for the same exact part, and then they don't even have the part in stock at the store, and you got to wait for their warehouse to deliver it. Cut out the middleman. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box right underneath your shipping information so they know that I sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Titans fans, it is a Twitter Tuesday edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, and we're going to cap it off here, going over the rest of your mailbag questions. You guys sent in some good ones. Before we get into those, I do want to thank you again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen every day. As for your second listen, folks, it is NFL draft season, so make sure you check out the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. It's hosted by Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker. They're breaking down the draft from 2 angles every single day. They're looking at prospects. They're looking at mock drafts. They're looking at big boards, of course. But they're also looking at things from a front office perspective. So make sure that you get as ready for the NFL draft as possible by checking out the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, free and available on all platforms all the time. But moving into the rest of your guys' questions, and there are some goofy ones in here that I'm excited to get into. Before we get into those, though, I'm going to get to one that isn't very goofy and is quite serious, quite frankly, and it's from Brett Hobbs. And Brett says, does Calcaterra's concussion history scare you? And we're talking about tight end prospect Grant Calcaterra. And he finished his career with SMU, but he started his career with Oklahoma. He had multiple concussion issues that actually had him retire from playing football during his college career. He changed his mind. He came back, felt like he had some unfinished business. But yeah, anytime people have pre existing medical concerns that have caused them to already quit the sport, yeah, I think it does scare you. And I think that's going to make him drop pretty far in the draft. And if he's available in the 6th or the 7th round and the Titans want to take a chance on him there, I'm perfectly okay with that. I'm fine with that. But anything higher than that, and man, you're really I guess you're really getting risky. There's no other way to put that. But continuing to go through some of these mailbag questions with you guys. Uh Slappy says, well, let's do Kevin Taylor's here. Kevin says, AFC West is stacked this year. So who do you think we will come up against in the playoffs? How do you rate our chances? Well, I think the Titans will win the division. I think this year they'll probably be 3rd or 4th seed. With that in mind, you're looking at the last 2 wild card spots is who you would be playing. I think the last 2 wild card spots will probably be held by one of those AFC West teams, Chargers or Broncos, probably. And then I would say the Patriots. I hope the Titans go up against the Patriots. I hope the Patriots are the 6th or 7th wild card, 6th or 7th seed in the AFC playoffs. And I hope the Titans can play them in round 1. If the Titans play the Patriots in round 1 of the playoffs, they will get out the snide. They will finally win a playoff game. It's been 2 seasons since we've seen it happen, but that's the matchup that I'm hoping for the most is the Patriots in round 1, because I think they could be a wild card team, and the Titans will probably win their division. So that's my answer to that one. But great question there, Kevin. All right. Time to get a little unserious, folks. I'm excited for these. Varney Vale, we'll start there. He says, I know you aren't a big country music guy, but interested in your thoughts on Eric Church canceling a Saturday night show to attend the UNC Duke game. Personally, I think he is allowed to make that decision as long as the ticket buyers still have tickets to future shows. Varney, I agree with the way you feel, but not for the reason why. So just so you guys know, Eric Church, country music singer, is a huge North Carolina fan. North Carolina played in the Final Four against Duke on Saturday night. First time those teams have ever played in the NCAA tournament. So just a monster game for those two programs and their fans. So I get that Eric Church canceled his show to go to that once-in-a-lifetime event. I don't blame him for doing that. But where you say, personally, I think he's allowed to make that decision as long as ticket buyers still have tickets to future shows. What if you could only go on this date? What if you bought a hotel? What if you rented a car? What if you got childcare? What if you set everything up for this months in advance to go to this date? And the available tickets that they give to you, hey, he'll be back in San Antonio on this date. Well, what if that date doesn't work for you because you have prior obligations, you have a prior trip, you have work commitments, you have child commitments? So he's not off the hook as long as fans get tickets to a future show. Because who's to say that that date and that situation works for those fans who spent their money and planned this out? Now, like I said, though, I agree with the way you feel about it. I don't blame Eric Church for doing that. It's perfectly fine that he made that decision. But what I'm saying is, I also don't blame anybody who was his fan, who was a fan of his, that despises him now because of what he's done to their plans. Okay? That would be like you're picking up a birthday cake for your child. You specifically ordered a specific custom-made cake, and then the day you go to pick up the cake, they say they're closed because they went to some cake event that took place in a different state that they wanted to go to. Well, you made a prior business commitment to this person to deliver them a cake for their child's birthday. You can't just say, hey, we'll give you a cake when we get back. Well, my kid's birthday party is gone. So, the plate doesn't go back together. So I'm okay with Eric Church doing what he did as an individual person and a fan of North Carolina, but I'm also okay if you hate him as a person who bought tickets to that show because it's ruined your plans as well. So I'm okay with both sides. You can hate Eric Church if you were the victim of that situation, and Eric Church, I'm fine with you making that decision in your own personal life. You only get one. Okay. So I'm cool with it either way, but I don't think that I don't think that he's off the hook basically from that. And by the way, I'm not a big country music guy at all, but I like country music. You know, I can dig it. And Eric Church specifically, Eric Church is really good. Oh man, Luke Combs, really good out of these new wave artists. Which Eric Church and Luke Combs probably aren't considered new wave anymore, but that just shows you my lack of knowledge about, the ins and outs of current country music. But I like those two dudes as modern country artists, but I mostly like older 90s, early 2000s country. Kenny Chesney and Brad Paisley, Dierks Bentley, I'm a big fan of, and even Brooks and Dunn and Garth Brooks and Travis Tritt and I could go on Brooks and Dunn and on and on and on and on. I like old school country. Anyways, next question though comes from Slappy. He says, "We need a Rollins ranking on every live action Batman, best actors and best movies." Okay, the best Batman. As for the actual actors, I'm gonna go. And this is controversial, but I'm gonna go. Ben Affleck, Robert Pattinson, Christian Bale, Michael Keaton, um, Adam West, Val Kilmer, George Clooney. I think that's all of them. That's the only ones that I'm in. I'm not counting Kevin Conroy, but he's an absolute legend. So yeah, that's my ranking of those guys. As for the best movies, the best movie is The Dark Knight. The second best Batman movie is The Batman that just came out. The third best Batman movie is Batman, the Michael Keaton, 1989. The fourth best, in my opinion, is Batman Begins. The fifth best is Batman vs. Superman. The sixth best is The Dark Knight Rises. Uh, the seventh best is let me replace this. Batman Returns. The second Michael Keaton Batman is in the top five. The Batman with Jack Nicholson is number 7. And then Batman and Robin, which is the Val Kilmer one, I think would be 8. And then Batman Forever, which is the one with George Clooney, is by far the worst one, even though it's hilariously campy. But anyway, yeah, that would be my ranking. So did that on the spot. Didn't write that down. So committing from memory. Tucson Titan says, who would win in a fight between a grilled cheese sandwich and a taco? Okay, so the grilled cheese sandwich is super sturdy, probably got more power in its hands, and has more depth to it to take shots and take blows and body blows. But listen, a taco has a smaller surface area, so it's harder to hit. So the grilled cheese you can hit a lot more because it's a lot more exposed. Also, a taco, hey, tomato falls off, I'm throwing that. Onion falls off, I'm throwing that. Cheese, will that create conflict in the grilled cheese because it doesn't want to attack fellow cheese? I think that there's a mental advantage for the taco. I think that there is a weaponry advantage for the taco. And I think there's a disadvantage for the grilled cheese and the amount of surface area that's available. It's like playing, if you ever play shooter games like Apex Legends, Call of Duty, blah, 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 a hitbox. These characters look like characters, but the internal coding, they have a hitbox where they can get shot by guns. A grilled cheese has a way bigger hitbox. He's like a big refrigerator. If you play Apex Legends, the grilled cheese is like Pathfinder and the taco is like Wraith. So give me the taco on that. Plus, I like tacos better than grilled cheese. So see a grilled cheese. Although I do love a good grilled cheese. I don't want to be considered a grilled cheese hater here, but I was put in a tough position. Andrew, I said his name wrong last time and he corrected me. So you know what I'm going to do for you this time, Andrew? I'm literally gonna read your description of your name to me so that I can get it right. Maybe, if I can find where you spelled it out. You send some long messages, Andrew. I'm not real mad about it, but it does make it kind of difficult to go back and find certain things that you said. I can't find her. Andrew Geiserler. I think that's what you told me. Either way, Andrew, I got love for you, brother. Anyways, oh, here it is. Gieseler. Andrew Gieseler. Gotcha, bud. His question was, man, you know what, guys? It's just my fault here. All right, here it is. Why do hot dog buns come in packages of 8 when hot dog packages come in 10. Listen, Andrew, we're exposing a long-term plot here. It's all about big buns. You got big pharma, um, you got big government, and now you got big buns. All right, big buns is out here trying to get us to buy more buns. Oh, I got 10 hot dogs. I only got 8 buns. Guess what I got to do? Buy 2 packs of buns. It's a scam. It's a conspiracy. We got to be on the lookout for big buns. We got to take down beef jerky. We got to take down big pharma, and we got to take down big buns. Great call out, Andrew. You got to lead the crusade on that. The last question that I have here comes from Corbin, and I saved it to the end because it's basketball. He just says if he could get my take on what went wrong with the Lakers this year. Okay, so I'll go through this quick. Number one, terrible roster construction by Rob Pelinka, the GM. The trade for Russell Westbrook to give away all your defensive depth for Russell Westbrook was doomed. Russell Westbrook's one of the least efficient, one of the losingest players, not in terms of record, but in terms of his style of play on a team. He's a selfish player. He can only play well if he's in a system where it's all about him getting his numbers. He cannot play well in a system that is designed to win, especially right now in his career. So that was a terrible move by Rob Pelinka, plus signing a bunch of dudes who should be retired right now, and DeAndre Jordan, Trevor Ariza, Wayne Ellington. Just terrible roster construction and decisions. Then the coach is to blame as well, Frank Vogel. How are you starting DeAndre Jordan? How are you starting Trevor Ariza? How is the season on the line and you're giving DNPs to Austin Reeves? How are you having lineups out there with only Russell Westbrook? The other night when Anthony Davis came back, instead of staggering Anthony Davis and LeBron James, who are your 2 best players, he takes Anthony Davis and LeBron out at the same exact time and has them play together the exact same time. Just terrible management by Frank Vogel, who's a dinosaur when it comes to offensive sets anyway. He was slow to adjust, and even when he would find adjustments, he would go back to what he knows best. A lack of being able to evolve and a lack of vision for the rotations. Just absolutely piss poor coaching by Frank Vogel all year long. And also the players. The players didn't take the game seriously. They didn't hustle on defense. They didn't stay locked in. They disrespected the game of basketball. And in return, the game of basketball disrespected them back. This Lakers team is a bunch of clowns. I have watched every single second of the Lakers since I had enough money to afford NBA League Pass. I bought NBA League Pass for $20 a month on a mini laptop in 2012. I watched the Dwight Howard, Steve Nash, Kobe Bryant, Pau Gasol Lakers team be absolutely garbage, but I still watched every single game. This season is the first season that I have ever not been busy and not watched a Laker game that was on. I haven't watched the Lakers play a full game in months. I canceled my League Pass subscription for the season. This team is a disaster. They're a joke. They're disrespectful for the fans. And for Russell Westbrook to come out in press conferences all the time and say he doesn't care about the Lakers fans and what they're saying, he doesn't care that they're booing. If they boo, they can go home. Man, how about you leave? Lakers fans have been watching championship basketball for decades. They know what a good basketball team is. They know what a good basketball player is. It's you, Russell Westbrook, who should go, not the Lakers fans. It's you. You have failed to adapt your game. You have failed to adjust. You are hard-headed. You don't take coaching, and I'm sick of that guy being on my team. See you, Westbrook. Get him out of here. Stretch, trade, whatever they have to do. Get that man off my team so I can love basketball again. Secret for you guys, watching the Titans is different for me now than it was before I did the podcast. At the end of the day, I have a notebook. I have to pay attention. I have to tweet. I have to interact. It is my job to watch the Titans play, and it feels like that some days. The Lakers are the only pure sports fandom I have left, and this Lakers team has robbed me of that, and I am internally furious about it, and it is becoming external as I continue to talk about it. So I'm going to calm down. I'm going to let that go, and I'm also going to let you guys go. Enjoy the rest of either your Tuesday night or the rest of your Monday night or your Tuesday morning. Either way, I appreciate you guys for sending in the questions. That's going to do it for me today, though, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.